Hello writers and welcome back to Spooky Writes. My name's Kemal Onor. I'm a horror short story author. Today I'm going to change some things up in these videos because I want to figure out what the best way is to present this information to you, the viewer. That's right, I want to figure out the best way to give this information to writers, the best way that it can appeal to people who are looking to improve their writing skills. And who knows, I may end up changing it back to the way it was before, but for right now, a lot of you aren't subscribed. A lot of you are just watching the video and not hitting subscribe. So if you like this type of content, make sure to drop a like, make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already. It means a lot. Help this channel grow. And with that said, let's just get into today's topic. So today we are talking all about fiction, fiction, fiction. That's right, fiction. The art of lying, the art of make-believe, the art of consuming copious amounts of coffee in order to write. So if it's lying, if it's all just make-believe, does it actually have to be believable? Well, that's what we're talking about on this episode. So that's what we're looking at today. So, does your fiction have to be believable? It's an important question to ask. Well, yes, it does. Well, yes, it does, my intrepid friend. It needs to be believable in certain aspects. Your story, despite it being fiction, despite it being... So some of the ways that your story has to be believable is your characters have to react in a believable way. Readers want to see the human qualities within your stories, within your writing. They want to see writing that reflects human nature, writing that evokes human emotion. And if your characters are behaving in a way that's unbelievable, it's not going to have the same power. It's not going to have the same power that it would if your characters were believable. So your characters certainly have to behave in a way that's believable, in a way that would be expected that a character would behave based off of his or her age, based off of his or her gender, based off of preconceived notions of how this character might act. And this is work that you as the author have to put in the scaffolding to build up the character, to build up the personality traits of your characters. If your character is afraid of the dark, it doesn't make sense for that character to suddenly say, let's charge headfirst into the cave and fight the big demon monster, because I'm no longer afraid of the dark. Let's charge full ahead into the cave. So let's say that your protagonist is an 11-year-old. Whether it's a boy or a girl, that character needs to behave as an 11-year-old, as readers would expect an 11-year-old to behave. It would if your character is an 11-year-old who sits down and orders a cup of coffee, that's not very believable, and it's going to take the reader out of the fictive dream. And this is the number one thing that you want to avoid as an author. You want your readers to be immersed in the fictive dream. You want them to be lulled into a sense of an alternate reality. You want them to forget that they are reading a book. You want them to be convinced that everything that is occurring within a separate space. But it needs to be believable in order to lull your readers into the idea of coming to the fictive dream, of not questioning the motives of your characters, of not questioning, why is this 11-year-old buying a cup of coffee and not ordering it with milk, of all things? Because it's important to remember that stories are about characters. Whether real or imagined, stories are about characters. Readers want to see the human elements within the characters. They want to see reflections of themselves in the characters that they are reading about. They want to see the best and the worst traits of the characters that they're reading about. They want to see the characters' bravery that they have in themselves. They want to see the characters' fears. They want to see characters who overcome. They want to see characters who struggle, and in the final hour they achieve something, whether real or imagined, just like all of my imaginary friends. Right, guys?
We're really more of acquaintances than friends.
You literally mounted us on the wall.
Hoo-hoo, I'm made of wood, or I'd fly away.
So in order for your readers to be able to find your characters as believable, You need to present your characters in a way that doesn't have the readers questioning the motives, questioning why the characters are behaving in a way that they are. Why are they suddenly no longer afraid of the dark? Why is this 11-year-old buying a cup of coffee and not ordering it with milk? What barbarian drinks their coffee black? I am that barbarian. It's okay. I think coffee tastes better black, but that's not the topic of this video. The topic of this video is, does fiction actually have to be believable? Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, but I write fantasy fiction. Fantasy has its own set of rules. I write science fiction. That has its own set of rules. It's not believable to have characters on a foreign planet. It's not believable to have characters falling in love on the planet Pluto because Pluto's not a planet for whatever reason. But regardless of the genre that you are writing, you need to create characters that are believable. You need to create characters that are facing scenarios that are believable based off of the fictive world, based off of the environment that your story is set in. If your story is set on the planet Venus, there's going to be different obstacles that your characters are going to face than if they were on the planet Earth, or if your characters were in a fantasy setting. There are going to be different rules and different parameters for those stories, and you as the author have to kind of build this into your storytelling. You have to build it into the way that your story is structured. So especially if you're writing in a fantasy setting, if you're writing in a non-traditional setting that's not in Earth, that's not on Earth, that's in a secondary world, that's on a secondary planet, you need to establish the rules and you need to stick to these rules. For example, if one of your characters has the ability to cast fire from their hands, why are they able to cast fire from their hands? Why can't everyone have this? Why doesn't everyone have this magical ability? And you need to establish the rules. And I remember when I was in undergrad, I had a professor who talked to me about how, regardless of your setting, regardless of whether your story is fiction, whether your story is fantasy, whatever, regardless of genre that you're writing, you have to have the buses run on time. All the buses have to run on time. So having the buses run on time, what this really means is once you establish the rules of your world, of your fictional setting, of your story, you have to stick to it. Again, maybe this is a world where 11-year-olds do drink their coffee black, or maybe it's a world where 11-year-olds are forced into higher status roles. Maybe it's a world where it's expected that all 11-year-olds are obviously the king and ruler of the land. And how would that affect their mental psyche? How would they hold themselves? They would probably not hold themselves as readers would traditionally expect an 11-year-old to react. And so there's a lot of ways you can play around with it, but once you establish the rules, you have to stick with it. You have to keep the buses running on time. The last thing you want to do is have your readers questioning the motives of your characters, questioning the believability of your story. Your story can be completely unbelievable. It can be set anywhere. It can be set on a platform in space. It can be set in the belly of a whale. It can be set anywhere that you can possibly imagine. It can be about anything that you can possibly imagine your story being about. None of that has to be grounded in reality, but your characters have to be grounded in reality, and the situations that your characters are behaving towards needs to be realistic. Again, it needs to have that human element to it, because that's the primary reason why we read stories, is we read stories to see that human element, to have that human connection. Storytelling is at the core of humanity, and it's one of the most important things. It's one of the main reasons why storytelling and writing and literature has stood the test of time, because there are universal stories that we all feel so deep in our core that we will return to again and again. And so you don't want your readers to be questioning the believability of your story. You don't want your readers going, why is this 6-year-old ordering coffee with milk? Surely this 6-year-old is a boss kid and he would drink his coffee black. We want to have characters who are believable. Again, the goal is to have our readers fall into the fictive dream. And once you get readers to fall into the fictive dream, you don't want to jar them out of that dream. You don't want them to be going, wait a second, I thought this character is behaving in a way that is not believable based off of the description that the author has given me, based off of how he reacted to the first time he saw the spooky clown. It doesn't make sense that the kid would obviously climb into the sewer to get eaten by a obvious evil clown. None of that makes any sense. And so once your readers are questioning the believability of your story, that's when you're going to have a very difficult time of getting them to fall into the fictive dream, to getting them to buy into what you're writing, to get them to buy into the story overall. Again, we want to write stories in a way that the reader forgets that he or she is reading a book. They forget that he or she is reading. They forget that they are reading words on a page, and they accept it as truth. They accept your fiction as believable. So you do this by creating characters that are reacting in ways that are believable based off of the rules that you have established, based off of the rules of your world, based off of what you have written. And again, keep the buses running on time. And thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep it spooky. And of course, here's your writing prompt for sticking all the way to the end. Stepping off the space shuttle, before him he saw blank. So set your timer and start writing. Thank you so much.